Final Fantasy is one of my favorite video game series of all time. And within that series, there is no other game that I've played more than Final Fantasy XIV. I love this game. It is like a love letter to the entire Final Fantasy series. There is so much going on with references and allusions to the other games in the series, but sometimes it's a shame that things get missed. So with this video series, I plan on going through almost every single Final Fantasy reference in Final Fantasy XIV. Whether you're a veteran of the series or just starting out with 14, I'm hoping that this will give you more of an appreciation for how much 14 references the other games in the series. And with that, we start with Final Fantasy 1. Final Fantasy 1 was released in 1987 on the Famicom system in Japan. The game box had artwork from the legendary Yoshitaka Amano. Here we see his depiction of the hero known as the Warrior of Light, and this term Warrior of Light was used all the way back in Final Fantasy 1. This entire outfit of the Warrior of Light is obtainable within Final Fantasy 14. The Helm of Light is obtained by purchasing the collector's edition of A Realm Reborn. The rest of the outfit is obtained through the Labyrinth of the Ancients Alliance dungeon. The weapon and shield are obtained through the Seat of Sacrifice Extreme Trial. More on that later. When you start your adventure in Final Fantasy 1, you have a choice from 6 jobs. These are the Warrior, Monk, Thief, Black Mage, White Mage, and Red Mage. All of these jobs are present in Final Fantasy XIV. In Final Fantasy 1, by giving a rat tail to Bahamut, which is also the first time you see Bahamut in the series, you are able to upgrade your jobs into better versions of themselves. Final Fantasy XIV has a job upgrade system as well. Next, we'll look at the minions of Final Fantasy XIV. There are 3 minions that are direct references to the original Final Fantasy. These are the Minion of Light, the Red Mage, and the Warrior of Light. The Minion of Light can be switched between Warrior, Black Mage, and White Mage. These take on the 3D forms of their 2D sprites. The same can also be said about the Red Mage minion. And the Warrior of Light minion design is simply the Yoshitaka Amano design of the FF1 Warrior of Light. Moving on, we'll be looking at areas that appear in Final Fantasy XIV that are references to the original areas in Final Fantasy 1. Our first area is Matoya's Cave. In this cave, we hear a slightly slower version of the original theme of Matoya's Cave. And of course, the cave houses Sorceress Matoya, in which is a direct reference to Matoya herself in Final Fantasy 1. There are even magic rooms sweeping around the cave, much like the original version. Next, we're going to Kaluja in Final Fantasy XIV, specifically up in the north, near the Duergar Mountains, in which this is where the dwarves live. This is an entire reference to Mount Duergar in Final Fantasy 1, where their dwarves also live. The phrase Lolly Ho actually comes from Final Fantasy 1 as well. This area is also near Mount Gulg, in which this is a reference to the dungeon Mount Gulg in Final Fantasy 1. However, in 14, the reference is only in name itself, and unfortunately the music does not appear in this game. Next, we're going to look at one of the raid fights that appear in Stormblood, specifically Alphascape 1.0. This fight features Chaos, who is also the final boss of Final Fantasy 1. The battle theme used for this boss is a remix version of the original battle theme. In this area, you are fighting in the Chaos Shrine, in which this is also where Chaos appeared in Final Fantasy 1 as well. Chaos uses 4 abilities that he used in the original fight of Final Fantasy 1. These are Blaze, or Inferno in Final Fantasy 14, Tsunami, Cyclone, and Earthquake. And finally, this last part will be the spoiler warning, as it will give away a vital point in Shadowbringers. So if you do not want to be spoiled, click at this timestamp if you want to skip the spoilers. In Final Fantasy XIV patch 5.3, the story of the original Warrior of Light in the first takes on the appearance of the Amano Warrior of Light. And in the final fight of 5.3, you take on Elidibus, in which he takes on the form of the original Warrior of Light. And there you have it. These are all the major references to Final Fantasy 1 in Final Fantasy 14 up to patch 5.5. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribe, as this is one of the first projects I want to do for this channel. Thank you for watching, and in the next video, we'll be looking at the world of Final Fantasy 2.